Okay, hi Kenneth. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Actually, I'm excited about this talk because once we have the pre-call, we were discussing a different points that we will bring up to the table, and it seems really exciting. The future of progressive web apps and modern web, actually, as we were talking, is pretty bright, right?
Yeah, I do think so. Yeah, actually, I think you brought up a nice point there. It's like the name Progressive Web App, it's great and it's not so great because it's great that you can go out in companies and say that this new thing called Progressive Web Apps, and that
Mm-hmm.
kind of makes people listen. But in reality, it's basically just like the modern web. Uh, because just like with, if you remember, like the days of HTML5, like that brand that you go out and talk to your product managers, like we should do an HTML5 app was really powerful. So people really
Mm-hmm.
wanted to invest. But in theory, it was not the HTML5 spec. It was like HTML. People considered it like CSS free, geolocation, all kinds of other APIs that were not actually part of HTML, but still they used the brand HTML5.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the same today that we sometimes see like people say, oh, progressive web apps. Well, technically it's web app manifest, it's service workers. Uh, but like when people actually when you talk to developers, that's not what they see. They see like the modern web with those features, but also all these other kind of features coming to the modern web as file system access or push notifications and the like.
Okay, so before we jump into those points, let me also like convince the viewers that you are the right person to speak about this because Kenneth, you are a senior web platform architect at Intel and you work at Project FUGU, which is like a initiative started by Google. And also, you collaborate with Microsoft, Intel to actually standardize things in the browsers to bridge this gap between what can happen on native platforms and what can happen on the web platform. With those big companies, big brands to actually push the web forward. Am I correct?
Yeah, that sounds about correct. I can probably give a bit of feedback. So yeah, I do work at Intel. So I work on our web platform engineering team, and we're basically trying to take the web to the next level and make both of all like we wanted to work really well on Intel. So like of course we do optimization to Chromium, V8, and all kinds of libraries. It could be even be the OS to make sure that the web runs really great on our platform. But we also want to make it a compelling developing platform. We're seeing that
Mhm.
on desktop that people are adopting more and more web. So that has been like a trend that's going on for many years. Uh, and even I think like Microsoft like publicly shared some of the telemetry and said that more than 60% of the time spent on Windows is actually inside of a web browser. We have similar telemetry at Intel, which shows the exact same. But if you think about that, that's not the only interaction people have with the web on Windows, because you also have like these Electron apps like Visual Studio Code, maybe Spotify. There's multiply and like Slack, for instance. They're all based on web technology, but because there's a few features missing on the web platform, they wrapped it into this like container with like this like package with Chrome and shipped it as an application. But that could become like a progressive web app in the future. So uses of web on desktop is really big. So of course we want to promote that as a nice way to develop applications, because we
Mhm.
do realize that people cannot create like an application for say like uh, iPad OS, one for Windows and one for Chrome OS, one for Linux, one for Android. Like people have like limited resources, and on desktop, it's really looking at that. What people prefer using is web technology. They want to be cloud first. They want to be on the cloud, having a cloud backend, and take advantage of that. And like the web has all these advantages. Everything's just like a URL away. You type a URL in your browser and it loads immediately. You don't need to figure out what is this, install it, maybe wait like 20 minutes to get it installed, reboot a few times, and then you can check out what you're actually dealing with. So yeah.
Yes, you said, for example, installability, but those things that are possible with native apps has also some advantages. Like, for example, you can discover your app through the App Store, and then how about this progressive web app space fits into that I heard that recently we have a possibility to put progressive web apps into the store. So this like has those both benefits. You don't have to install it if you don't need to, because you can just open the website. But also, if you want to have your app listed in the App Store, you can put it there, and then we would have trusted web application or something like that.
Yeah, I can give a bit more background. So, like, definitely the web is good for discoverability. It kind of depends on what you're trying to discover. So, if you know what you're searching for, like I want Facebook, and you don't know how to type in a URL, like it makes sense you go to an app store and you search for Facebook. Same with games, you don't know exactly what is the name, you don't know the URL, like you can find things. But when you're like the long tail of like you're just like searching for a product to buy, or some kind of specific like the weather forecast, and maybe you stumble upon like a great progressive web app. For the web, it's really great for this kind of discoverability. But as you said, like sometimes people really want to be in the app store because that's where their users are looking for the experiences. So why not be in both places? So I think like Microsoft, they looked at this like early on. This was before the Edge was based on Chromium. They were looking at, oh yeah, like maybe we should have these like auto discoverable, like do some Bing indexing. They kind of like went away from that, but they still like toyed around with this idea, like at least these apps should be in their like Microsoft store, because like that's a great way to find them. And of course, if they can share the same runtime and it's just like super quick install because it's already there, it's the web after all, that would be awesome. Of course, like these stores have a lot of infrastructure, and so from one day to the other, it's probably not just going to be like you submit a URL. Hopefully, in the future, we'll get to that point. So Microsoft have been working on that. They made ways that you can kind of like wrap up your progressive web app and have it in the Microsoft Store. They even have this tool called PWAbuilder.com, which is a website where you can go and it will actually you list like your progressive web app. I think you have to add some kind of like asset link to like show it's actually your website, like a way that you can say, hey, I'm linking this app ID to this website, so that no one else than you can go and actually submit it to the store. Same thing with Android. So they do that, and they generate then like a way that you can get like it into the Windows Store, and even on the Android or the Play Store, it's called. It's not just Android, it's also on Chrome OS. So Google have done this similar thing. They have this thing. I don't know, like if you launch a progressive web app or add to home screen, install it on, say, Android, and you launch it. It's not launching a separate app with a web view. It's launching an instance of Chrome. So if Chrome is already running, it's just like another window.
It has serious consequences for the user experience, right? When you launch it,
because like if you had like a separate app with a web view, it would not be sharing like preferences, like whether you like allow the camera access for a specific website, cookies, and all of that, like caches, storage, IndexedDB.
And for me, like having the cookies, for example, is very important because I don't want to re-log in every time to the service, because I'm already logged in the Chrome, and I don't have the access. I need to again tap in the password, for example.
Right. So Google came up with this solution called, I believe it's called like custom Chrome tabs. So it's also used if you're inside, say, a native app like Twitter. There's also a progressive web app of Twitter. But like, let's say you're using like native Twitter and you click on a link. It will normally show like this other sheet where you see like an embedded browser. That is actually also just running inside of Chrome. So like a remote Chrome. And that's based on this called Chrome custom tabs. So progressive web apps on Chrome OS are basically like full screen Chrome custom tabs. And this is really nice. So what Google did is that they worked on allowing you to use this Chrome custom tabs in full screen from an Android app. So what you do is that you write a very little bit of code to like instantiate this view from Android, and then of course you can extend a little bit from Java, and you can like set the icons and the like, and then like you'll package it up as an APK, like Android package, and install it through the Play Store. So it's kind of like really nice, and this is called Trusted Web Activities. It's trusted because it requires this asset link. The PWAbuilder.com, that actually allows you to just like give it, if you already have the asset link set up on your web server, you just give it the URL to the manifest, and it will generate this APK for you. Actually, it's very interesting on Android. If you go and from Chrome and you install a progressive web app, it's not just creating a link to that website, it's actually generating an APK. So it is generating an Android package and installing it on your system. That sounds a bit like, why do you need that? Well, you need it because the security model of Android is all based on APKs. So this is like you get like your like secure storage and all of that. So it's kind of like a technical implementation detail. So this kind of brings you the exact same, and you can just like then submit that to the Play Store. The interesting part, of course, with stores is that if you submit something there, you have to abide to their policies. So there might be a policy saying that, well, this kind of content we just don't want on our store. It could be like, say, gambling or something like that. And then, of course, like you cannot submit it. There's also like usually a policy, I think, on Play that you are not allowed to use other kind of billing than Play billing, like their preferred way of like paying. So if you were doing something that you just like allow people to buy an extension pack for your small little game, and you allow people to use your pay with Visa, MasterCard, that will not be approved. So for this reason, Google, they actually worked on adding something called Digital Goods API that when used in combination with web payments, which is like a standard API, you would actually be able to use like Play billing if you want it on their Play Store.
So actually, it's possible to use, for example, if I have my Android phone and I'm connected to Google with my payment, I'm able to integrate this payment with this trusted web activity.
Yeah.
Okay. Kenneth, do you want to tackle questions as they appear on the chat, or you want to at the end of
we can do that. I just want to round this off because I just thought about something else. Because like now we were talking about these trusted web activities. What is very interesting is that if you have Chrome OS is a operation system mostly based around the web and Chrome, but it also allows you can enable Linux apps if you really want to do that. Most people don't, mostly developers, but you can also install, it also has the Play Store, and you can install Android apps. But they usually come up like these like smaller windows because they're not optimized for like desktop experiences. So people like me were like wondering like, oh yeah, so if people they add like say a Twitter trusted web activity in the Play Store and I install that on Chrome OS, it's probably gonna be like a terrible experience because it's gonna like launch an Android version of Chrome in a small window, and that's not gonna look very nice on my desktop. I prefer like installing it from Chrome. But like Google's really smart because what they did is that they actually use the same APK, but when you're launching it, it's actually launching in the integrated Chrome version that comes with Chrome OS. So it looks like just like you added in from Chrome itself. So that experience is really great. I'm not sure this has totally rolled out yet for everyone, but you can find like I think like was YouTube TV, I think it was Google Photos and Twitter, at least like trusted web activities in the Play Store that you can install on Chrome OS and get like this very nice experience. And like regular users, like if it was my wife or my parents, they would not know that these were not like native apps. They just believe they're like really integrated, nicely done native apps, but they're actually progressive web apps wrapped into trusted web activities.
Okay, great. So we have a comment, I would say, and it would be nice if you could address that. Artem says, with current security concerns, user will never trust browser web apps with extended capabilities. It's easy to close the browser tab, but it will be the challenge to have power web apps without integration into the native platform and keeping some resources locally. Can we address that?
I am trying to understand exactly what it says. I think like
kind of like a doubt.
Let's take a step back. Like the web is supposed to be trusted and it's supposed to be safe. So like just going to a website like the drive-by web or like internal URL should not give you access to anything. It will have to be some kind of user engagement. So we try to really make sure that the user know what they're giving access to. So for instance, if you had something like Visual Studio Code as a progressive web app, and you go into that and say like, oh, well, I want to access this folder because this is where I'm checking out my GitHub repositories. Well, you'll get like this picker and it will show you like what you're sharing with the site. and that the site is not going to get access to anything else on your hard drive. They don't even know where that folder is on your hard drive. So in this sense, it's just as safe. Of course, like there's some permissions involved, but we really try to make it really clear what's going on. I actually think this is better than what native apps do, because users usually don't know what they're granting access to. It's just like by default you have access to whatever you want to have access to. And also like when the app is closed, it's not like having access to these things, right? It's only like when you're on. For instance, I worked on Wakelog, which is like a version, like a API where you can tell the site to not like turn off the screen. And actually people are doing this already, because if you're playing like a YouTube video, your screen is not turning off. So that's like adding this like Wakelog automatically. So what people were doing is that they were like creating this like 4x4 pixel videos and playing it on the website, just like draining your battery, for the only reason for the screen not to turn off. Because like there are like really good use cases, like a recipe website. Like I often cook, so I love looking at my phone, but when it turns off, it's super annoying because I have dirty fingers. I need to wash my fingers before, and then it like turns off again. So like we added this feature. I felt like, well, we don't need a prompt for that because like you can already do this. And the other reason, like if you turn off your screen automatically, if you lose focus of the website, go to another website, or just like tap through the apps. Well, when you do that, it's going to lose that ability. Suddenly, like the screen lock is not on anymore. It will have to request it again. So we really try to make sure that these apps only do things when you actually look at them. The same thing with like a video. You don't want a video to play and send that data to a website if it's actually not visible on the screen. So we're really thinking a lot about like privacy and security, and I think what we have is better than most native apps have.
Yeah, exactly. This is what I want to say. For example, let's put it on the other side. If you are installing like a Windows app with executable, you don't have this permission systems. Like, am I able to reach this folder, or am I able to do this? I mean, it's using the system resources by default. When you talk about progressive web apps, everything requires permission, because by default we are sandboxing the website. And right now it's not possible to just look through the folders, or just look inside your hard drive, right? If you say that you're going to enable it, first of all, it's going to be very limited, very scoped, and it would require additional permission from the user.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yes, like most native app, I know like native apps are trying to adopt a lot of the things we do on the web because it's a better model. But like on Windows, like you get access to file to the hard drive. There might be folders where you don't have access. Maybe you can look into them, but you cannot modify. But you can figure out a lot of things just by looking at someone's hard drive, like looking at like what a file's called and where they're stored and whatnot. And this is not possible on the web. Like you get access to this like folder and the subfolders. And then you are able to get like a serialized handle, so you can kind of like store. So when you launch the web app again, it can get access again only when it's running. So that is actually, I think that's quite neat.
Okay. We have a question from Min. In recent news, Mozilla is taking a step back from PWA. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Mozilla it's not going so great for Mozilla. They're resource constrained, and if you're resource constrained, well, you need to decide what you're focusing on. Keeping up with other browsers is very, very difficult. Unfortunately, I used to be a big fan of Firefox, and I had a lot of friends working for Mozilla. Unfortunately, most of them has been let go. So I basically think that they are resource constrained, and they decided that this is not something that they have the resources for at this moment, or they don't. Maybe they have other priorities instead.
Cool.
So yeah, that's really sad. I would point out that they have added pretty good progressive web app capabilities to the mobile browser, so there it works pretty well. It was never working fully implemented on desktop. So I think what they decided now is that they didn't have the resources to actually complete that work, so they decided to remove it instead, because it will go stale if you don't maintain that code, right? So yeah.
So what are the major players that are still relevant? Chrome, Safari, what else? Like what
Well,
Like,
if you look at the browser like industry for many years, like these things do change, right? Like we used to have like there was some point like people were just using basically Internet Explorer, and then like Firefox became a big thing, right? Mozilla and the Firefox, and then like suddenly you got Safari from out of nowhere, and it became a big thing. Then you got WebKit, Chrome appeared using WebKit, and everyone was like, oh well, now it's bad because they're using the same engine. But then like Google forked, and now if you look at the code from WebKit and Blink, which is called the Chromium engine, it's very, very different. They diverged a lot. But then you get like Opera, it's kind of like not making it. They went also to Chromium first, and then kind of like became irrelevant, unfortunately. Got sold off to a Chinese company. But then you got Edge.
yeah,
And
how
Edge,
about
Edge, they kind of had like the same issues, I guess. Like they had some issues, just like with resources. They had abandoned like Internet Explorer, and like after Internet Explorer 6, they kind of abandoned it, like dismantled the team. Then they got a new team. They kind of like continue working a bit on Internet Explorer, but like never like fully. It's not really competitive. But then at some point they decided with Edge, like now we're gonna make a great browser. But like it takes effort. Like there's a lot of features like that was easy for them to implement. Some features like in the standards were just like really, really difficult because of architectural changes they've made long ago. Like for instance, they had a lot of like what's it called, like document modes inside of the engine. So like, oh, if it's in this mode, then you do this code path, and this mode do that code path. So every time you had to make a change, you need to make sure that you maintain these like 6 different doc modes for every feature and test everything, and it was like really complicated. So they decided like to drop that off like in the Explorer and create Edge, kind of like clean it up. But like still they were in the issue that like, well, we have so much to implement to stay competitive, and is it really worth it? So instead we could just take Chromium and contribute, and we will start at the same level as Google, and we can make it highly optimized for Windows and make it a great experience for developers. And even if this doesn't pan out with Google, which I definitely hope it will, they could potentially fork Chrome, and you'd end up in the same situation like with WebKit and Chrome today, being totally different browsers. But they're like starting at the same level. So what we have now is that Microsoft actually contributed a lot to Chrome and made it a much better browser. And they've had like more resources to dedicate to different new specifications, and especially to the work on progressive web apps. So I think that's great. So yeah, the players today are basically like Chrome, like the major players like Chrome, Edge, and Safari. Then you have like minority players like Brave and specialized browsers, right? But yeah, that's about it. And of course, like Mozilla, but Mozilla is unfortunately, I don't know if they're below 5% now, but they're like slipping. So I'm not sure that we will have Mozilla in 5 years. Let's see.
You know, the things change, right? So let's jump to those fancy features. Like, for example, can you tell us, Kenneth, about Webshare target?
Yeah, so there's a lot of like new features coming to progressive web apps. So a lot of those features that we add to the web, we try to make them work everywhere, whether you have this application installed or not. Which is also why sometimes it's a bit difficult to talk about progressive web apps, because sometimes you want to talk about web apps and just the web. But some of these features actually kind of depend on application being installed. And one example would be Share Target. So on the web today, you have something called Webshare. It's even implemented in Safari, so you can go to a website and you could share, for instance, title, URL. You can even share files today, and you can share that to an installed app, something that you'll find on your phone or in the list of apps, or on your computer as a list of apps, right? So if you have like Twitter there, you click on Twitter,
phone, right, and I can share to WhatsApp, for example, or share to a different app. Like it's linked internally, that I can share the resource between places and apps in the native environment. And you are saying that the similar capabilities are going on to be available on web, right?
Yeah. So of course, like Google, they worked on this, and they added actually extensions to the web app manifest, which is part of progressive web apps. We kind of like explain to you like how an application can be a shared target. Like this is the URL where I'm gonna receive the data. So it's like with forms, like how you receive form data, right? So the app would have to be prepared for that. But we don't want to list like every app you've ever visited while browsing. as a share target. Just imagine like you want to share something to the app you interact with a lot, and you just see like 1,000 sites. That would not be useful. So we decided that this is only for like those apps that you have actually engaged enough with, that you actually installed them, like added to home screen and installed them as progressive web apps. So progressive web apps have this ability that they can become what is called share targets, and apps can share data to them. It could be a web app, or it could be like a native app.
Okay. And I'm curious about this add to screen feature, because back in the days, I don't remember when, but it was working this way that whenever you engaged with the application, you as a developer couldn't just ask for, can I add myself to the screen from the app? There's kind of engagement and propose to the user, would you like to add this app to your screen? How does it work right now?
Yeah, this is a big discussion, because like going to every site and having every site like tell you, hey, please add me to your system, that would be very annoying. But like the approach, like let's talk about the Chrome team. So I collaborate a lot with the Chrome team. So of course, like initially you gotta explain to people what progressive web apps are. You gotta show them that this ability exists. So Google started out by actually showing this kind of like mini prompt, not as annoying as on existing web apps, like install my native app, but kind of like the same thing, but in a very less annoying way, just like to educate users that this was an ability. Other browsers say like, oh, we don't want to do this, it's going to be annoying. But of course, now as there's becoming more and more progressive web apps available, they're starting to find better ways to do this. So for instance, on desktop, you go to a website that has a progressive web app. In the address bar, it's going to like show like install, and then it's like becoming just like an icon. So like kind of like get people's attention, but not like something that's annoying. And then like people, oh yeah, this one, like even like now I'm on this StreamYard and I see this icon here. Or just like, oh, okay, maybe if it was a progressive web app, it will like show this icon in the address bar. I can click and actually install it. So like really make it nice. So I don't know exactly. I don't have the details of Google's plans, but I know that now they're working on improving that dialogue on mobile. So that currently, if you have like the latest beta version and turn this on, if you go to a regular website, progressive web app, you still get this like little banner at the bottom. But if you have like additional things in that manifest, like a description, if you have categories, and if you have screenshots, it's going to show you a different dialogue that looks much nicer. And you can like swipe it up and you actually be able to see the screenshot from the app and read the description. So it would be my guess that they will probably want to maybe continue promoting this in this like way for these apps that have all of this, that have done all this great work to make this really nice. And probably like for the rest that haven't done this work and doesn't have a proper offline experience, they'll probably just like show maybe a small icon like, oh, you can install this, because now people have been educated.
And is it possible to have like an comment or maybe some imperative way that I can execute an API that would prompt this pop-up to the user? Or is it still that it has to the Google Chrome decides on its own when it is appropriate time to show this pop-up?
This you have been able to do on Chrome since the beginning, basically.
Really?
The way it works is that Google have this kind of engagement criteria, so they'll figure out when they believe that they want to show this prompt. When that happens, you can like listen for that, and you could like say like, don't show the prompt, but then you have access to this object in JavaScript, and you can hold on to it. And at the point that you want to show the prompt, with like you think like maybe like you're buying a ticket and you get the boarding card, and like say, hey, do you want to get access to your boarding card and add this to your home screen and install it? At that point, they can call like I don't know, remember the API, they'll probably call prompt on this object, and it will show. So the ability is that you can postpone it, and this definitely works on mobile. Yeah.
So first you need to catch it, that this is the moment.
Yeah, you need to suppress that dialogue from showing up.
Suppress it, and then you show it when you want it as a developer. Yes, because like that it was the game and that and be enough so that we can show this prompt and say that we can postpone it and make it more flexible. Yeah. So, but actually, I have a list of only on the desktop, by the way. So, what are you referring to, Jerome? Because I think that we have lost a little bit of traction. So, there are another like really cool features. Like, I remember when you told me about API. Can you bring us more when it comes to this API?
Sorry, you're dropping out a bit, so I didn't hear you. If you could repeat, that would be great.
I was asking, am I losing connection?
Yes, I cannot hear you.
Batching API.
Oh, the batching API. Yeah, so the batching API is another API that is available on, I don't know if it's available on Android, actually, I could check. But so it's definitely available on desktop. So this is an API that allows you, if you have this application installed, like a Progressive Web App, it allows you to show like this like icon on the icon for the application, like a badge showing you whether you have like unread notifications or something like that. So on Windows, you'll probably see like if you have like Gmail as a Progressive Web App, it's not a Progressive Web App. Let's say that the Twitter is a Progressive Web App installed on Windows using Edge or Chrome. I have it and I have like 2 unread notifications that will show as a badge on top of the icon. So that works pretty well. There's some systems that don't support like actually showing numbers, like on Android, and there you just see like a dot instead. So there's both abilities. So we're now waiting for Bartosz to come back. I think he's having some video trouble.
Yeah, I was turning off my video to see if it makes any help, but then you cannot hear me.
The quality is slightly better now. So
yeah, okay. So to sum up, batching API allows us to batch notifications and not show them instantly, so that the user not get annoyed. It's not getting annoyed with those multiple notifications.
Yeah, that I actually don't know what's going on with that. I think that's mostly like batching notification and the like is mostly like a native implementation, like how the notification system is implemented on like Android or Windows. Like that can be done without the developers having to do anything. There might be a few cases where like a hint would be nice, but I don't know the details of this work now.
So how about related apps API?
Yeah, so related apps API is get related apps, I believe we call, or all related apps. That is an API that's available on Android and on Windows, and that allows you to check whether if you have Progressive Web App, whether you have an other related app installed. So usually, if you have like a Twitter Progressive Web App and you also have the native Twitter app installed, the app would be able to know, and that's kind of important because. If you see that on the same system, they have both apps. You like Twitter might know that I have like a native Twitter app installed on some device, and on this device I'm using like Windows. I am just using the Progressive Web App. So they definitely want to show notifications on Windows through the Progressive Web App. But if I'm on my phone and I say I have both, they might not want to show like 2 notifications. Like okay, one for the native app and then the same notification again from the Progressive Web App. So this API allows them to detect that there are like multiply related apps and then like avoid doing something like that. There might be other cases where this is useful.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the cool thing that you introduced me before are those shortcuts. Actually,
you're blocking out a bit again. So.
Am I still getting cut, or
yeah, a little bit? I don't know if it's just on my end, but you are, yeah. So this is actually something we got on. We've had it on like desktop system for ages. So for instance, on Windows, you have this called jump list. So if you have like an app added to, say like the panel at the bottom, and you right click on it, say on Outlook. I actually have Outlook here, so it will like show you things like new email message, new appointment, new meeting, new contact. Like these like shortcuts into actions. And then you got the same thing on phones, like on Android. I can long press on an icon for an application, and it will be able to show me these like kind of like actions as well. So they call like different things like shortcuts and action. We call them shortcuts on the web. So I actually worked on adding support for that like long ago when it became a thing on Android. Google came with a counter proposal where they improved upon my ideas, and then it like was stranded there for a while until Microsoft actually picked it up and implemented that. So today you have this ability as well. So if I take my phone and I don't know if you can see that. Well, let me see if I can unlock it here. So if I long press on Twitter, you'll see like it shows up this explore a new tweet, and even shows my notifications. So
you long press.
Yeah, and then if I click on new tweet, it's gonna like launch into that experience specific place inside the app.
That's cool. So the developer is able to shortcuts that is going to pop up when click on the icon of the progressive web app.
Yeah. So on desktop, it's usually like right click, and on touch devices where you don't have a right click, it's normally like a long press. I think like iOS. I don't believe iOS has implemented that, but they have it for native apps, and it's kind of like a force press or something like that.
A couple of new other things like multi-screen placement allow us to do.
Yeah, so this takes a step from maybe like mobile apps to desktop. So progressive web apps, as I said, like talked a bit about it initially, is becoming really popular on desktop. So on desktop, you have slightly different use cases. You usually have like a bigger monitor. So you usually have like windowed applications because you can have them side by side, and you can alt tab with your keyboard easily, or put one to the side. I often do that. So this like brings a lot of different challenges. So I think like Microsoft is working on a way that you can actually control over the title bar. So because like many native apps like Spotify and Teams, they have like a search box in the title bar. So they're working on that. Google is working on tabbable mode, so that actually if you have like progressive web app, let me say that I have Slack, I could maybe create tabs inside of that progressive web app to like different like chat channels and the like. That is done in combination with something called declarative link capturing. So you can kind of like decide what happens when I'm launching or loading URL. So if the
you
URL
can embed multiple applications inside one.
No, it's like the same app. It's like the same app. Like you control your own domain. So if I have like a drawing app, right, and whenever like I open create like a new drawing, I create like a tab inside that app instead of creating a new window, or like removing that existing window. And that's also why it's like a display mode in Web App Manifest, but it ties into this called like link capturing. So you decide like, oh, if I'm loading a new URL inside the same, then please put it in the same window, or launch a separate window, or replace the existing window. So there's like different ways to do this declaratively. There's also the discussion about maybe allowing you to do this from a service worker in the future, like a very advanced way of doing it. Because from a service worker, when loading URL, you'll be able to like query like all the running windows of a certain application and all kind of different state and stuff. And then you can like very advanced things. For instance, there's like also this API that you mentioned, like the Windows placement. So on desktop, you might have like, if everyone remembers like using something like it's a kind of terrible drawing application, like it's GIMP. It's great in the features, but I hated that they're using like everything in like different windows. So you have like a window for the image you're editing. GIMP, yeah, and then you have like a window for the toolkits.
A lot of the whole screen.
Yeah, so like I never liked that, because like those windows, like they lose focus one in, and they're like, where is it? But like you could do something like this on the web, because then you kind of like know where the windows are in combination with each other. And if you have like multiple screens, say like you're a stockbroker and you have like 6 displays, and every time you log into this website, you really want like some stocks on the top windows and some other things on the other windows, like, but it's kind of the same application doing it. You would be able to do that with this like new API called Windows placement, called Windows place. I don't remember exactly what the name of the
I have
API
in
is.
my notes, it's like multi-screen window placement.
Yeah, multi-screen window
something like that.
placement. So that kind of like allows you to do these like advanced things with like pop up different windows, show them in different places, which can be quite
But
useful. Like a simple example would be like, you think, oh, this like sounds really advanced, but think about something like a presentation application like PowerPoint as a progressive web app. Well, if you go into presentation mode, you probably want like, well, I want that window on the external display, but I want my notes on this display, plus maybe another widget to maybe do like a magic pointer or something. And you can do this with this API. So like there's all kinds of different APIs that makes more sense on desktop because you have more screen real estate and you have different input methods.
So coming back to this desktop environment, if we think of, for example, like Slack, I think it's like an Electron application, right?
It is, yeah.
So would it make sense, because we know Electron is very heavy, it's wrapping its own memory instance of Chrome or WebView. I don't know exactly what engine is behind that, but what I'm saying that it's not that efficient as if it was like yet another tab open in Chrome, right? So
yeah,
would it make sense to have it like progressive web app from the performance perspective instead of Electron as a standalone app?
Yeah, definitely. So Electron was a great idea, but it has a lot of like downsides. It's actually kind of funny because like the history of Electron started at Intel by some of my colleagues in China. So they actually created something called Node WebKit, was like the first kind of Electron thing. And the intern who worked on that team, he actually went to I don't know, was it GitHub who started Electron? Yeah, with the Atom browser, with the Atom like IDE. So he went to GitHub and created Electron there. So it's kind of like the same idea. The idea is that you take Chrome and turn it into a runtime for one application. And like if you have like one Chrome running and like multiple progressive web apps, yes, each of those apps will have its own sandbox, run maybe in a separate process, a separate thread. But like at least it's sharing things like the GPU resources and the compositor. But if you have like Electron, it has to duplicate everything. So it is more resource heavy than running as a progressive web app. The idea is of course, like then the security issue. Electron allows you to extend it from Node and get access to all kinds of like native things. So then you really need to be careful with like what you're embedding. If you're embedding like third-party code from a different site, that might be really bad if they get access to like your file system. But one of the biggest issue I think we have with Electron, apart from it being big and heavy on resources because it's a whole Chrome, it is that many of those apps they don't update as fast as Chrome updates. So with Chrome or Chromium-based browsers, you get a new version every 6 weeks, and with that comes, of course, like people announce like when they find like security issues and bugs, those like stay like hidden until everyone's like, you get the new release out and people have like, it has like rolled out to enough people, then like those become like public. Like security researchers are not gonna like keep quiet forever. They want like tell the world that they found this security hole and get famous. So it kind of like, okay, now everyone is on the new Chrome, like most people at least, and these are public. So yeah, you're safe. But if people then like don't update those Electron apps,
yes,
yeah, and that's often what happens.
The old runtime,
and that happens a lot.
So how, for example, Electron apps? I'm using Slack actually as an Electron app. So how do I know if this is not using some old vulnerable version of Chrome?
I don't know if you could like open the inspector like the dev tool somehow. I think there are ways you can do that. Maybe a command prompt. If you cannot right click and open it, you can probably go there and you can like you have access to the JavaScript console, so you can look at the use agent string or something like that, and you can figure out. But I like you might say, oh, wow, my Electron app is like is not like getting code from outside, so it's not an issue. But it might be like Slack, like you embed, like you can like post a link to a tweet and it will get like stuff from the tweet. And sometimes the exploit could be like an image format. Like they're like images are using a parser inside the browser, and sometimes people have found like a security vulnerability that actually can be triggered by reading an image. So that definitely ways you can get attacked by using an old browser engine.
So it seems like progressive web apps are putting a lot of strength and effort in terms of security, that those permissions that are like explicitly asked, that should I have an access to this and that, the environment is getting updated on the constant basis. So it seems like with progressive web apps, it's not a thing. It's as regular. If you guys are going into the direction that you focus on security, what is your comment on that?
You dropped out a little bit. What I think you were like discussing is that like what we want to do with the web is that we want the web to thrive. We want people to develop apps using the web. And there's like some people say, well, I'm fine with how the web is today. But I'm of the belief that if you don't keep up with commodity hardware and commodity what you can do in any native app, it's gonna lose at the end. Like the web is a meta platform. Other meta platforms have existed, like for instance Flash, and they're not around any longer. You need to stay relevant. So of course, once in a while you get like a new fancy device with a new specific feature, and that might not need to get exposed to the web, at least not immediately. But over time, like some of these features become commodity. So let's say that everyone depend on like camera access, like today, like it's very useful. And let's say like, that's really a very specialized thing. We don't need that on the web. Like initially we didn't have like video playback. You had to use Flash, right? Mm-hmm. Well, then if there's no way to do it, like, and if you don't keep up with like the common features, then like that's growing it, then we're like creating a gap between what common native apps, what almost every native app can do, and what people like basically what users expect to be able to do, or they expect their applications they're using to be able to do. If that gap, if that's not possible on the web, we're growing that gap. And that's an issue because we become irrelevant. Because it might be that you as a user like the web today and you would like to read your news sites, but the companies are not going to invest in the web, and the websites and experiences of tomorrow are not going to be built on the web. And if people don't build for the web, well, then eventually the web will die. That's just how it goes. Mm-hmm. This is how it's happened with every other meta platform so far. So I'm of the belief that we need to close down that gap, and we don't need to like have all the features available to native app available, at least like initially, but with time we need it to be available. Like if we couldn't play like video or get access to video stream on the web today, well, we will not be using like StreamYard now, right? Mm-hmm. and you will not be using like these like Google Meet for meetings. Like you need to build that. But more than that, you also need to make people and companies trust in the web. Trust that the web will stay competitive. It might have all the features you need today to build your experience, but will it have that in 2 years and 5 years? And you're building a product not just for today, but we'll probably maintain it for maybe 5 to 10 years. So at that point, it's very important for you that you can improve your application, add those new features that users expect to have, and not just your competitor that maybe decide to create a native app. Because like then you'll have to drop everything you've done and create a native app instead, and then you will be behind. Mm-hmm. So this is basically what Google was talking about when they created like the Project FUGU, which is like the capability project. The idea is not just like to crazily just give access to whatever you have on native platforms. It is really about like maintaining the core tenets of the web, which is like privacy, security, and it being safe, and there are other properties of the web that are really core to this experience. So whenever we like expose something, we're not exposing everything. We're trying to think about use cases, because like, yeah, you can expose everything, but it might not be useful. So if like, what are the use cases we want to drive? So like video editing, or maybe people expect that you should be able to blur the background, and maybe like sending everything to a server is very expensive for a company because they need to pay for like all the server cycles. So they say like, let's just do a native app instead, where we just do it on the client, because it has maybe there's even like an accelerator in the CPU that can do it for you. You cannot do it on the web. Everyone is going to move to like native. You see? Mm-hmm. So we really want to like keep on adding those things, but by looking at the use cases, make sure we can do it on the web, and then do it in a way that is like privacy preserving and secure, right? That's also why it's called Project FUGU, because FUGU is the puffer fish or the blowfish. That is like something that people actually eat in Japan. But the fish is eating like shellfish and algae from the ocean, and that actually means that its skin and its liver becomes super toxic. It's like a nerve toxin. So if you eat that, you will die within like, I don't know, 40 seconds, something like that. So people in Japan, they figured out like, if you take a training for many years and you get this certificate, you can be allowed to be a fugu chef, and you can cut it precisely so people can actually eat it without dying. So it's kind of like the metaphor for fugu. Like
Yeah, that makes sense.
we want to expose this to the web, but we know that if we don't do this carefully, really cut it out nicely and make sure that we're following the principles of the web, well, then it could be very dangerous. So we have that in mind all the time. An example, like I worked on web NFC. So this is not exposing like all of NFC. Like we looked at, okay, there's some very useful use cases. We talked to partners, people said, we really want this to be possible to do this on the web. And we end up exposing like what is called NDEF data exchange format, like NDEF. It's a very high level. You cannot use this for doing payments and probably not interact with a lot of the existing NFC use cases out there. They were just too scary, and we didn't find like a nice way of doing that. So at least like this provides like maybe 8% of very good use cases for people to do, but it's not exposing all of it. Maybe in the future we'll like add more, because like now there's another NFC standard based on top of it that allows communication with like IoT devices. So maybe if that becomes popular in say a couple of years, in 5 years, maybe then we want to go and implement that as well.
So, Kenneth, is it possible, because you are talking about amazing features, and I'm thinking about who comes up with the ideas. Is it possible, like some of us is going to send a ticket or proposition that it will be cool if you, dear Google, would provide this feature as a progressive web app in Chrome? How the process of propositions work? That am I allowed to somehow communicate? I mean, we know it. How does it work?
Sure, like I should probably find the links, but like if you can go to like the Chromium bug tracker and you can file under the FUGU label, you can file like a feature request. It's actually the way we do a lot with the FUGU project, is that we want someone that wants this feature and that wants to adopt it if it's available. It doesn't make sense to work on something that and then like ship in a browser and no one is using it. So we like partnering with people and companies. So they say that, okay, yeah, when you have something that will give you feedback, and if you have something we can try, we're going to try out like behind the flag, play around with it, give you feedback. And then later it's become an origin trial. I don't know if you know what an origin trial is. That is a website you can go to. There's one for Edge, there's one for Chrome. They don't have the same origin trials. And you can say like, hey, I want to opt into enabling this website on my origin, like my website, for a certain set of users. Without it being a feature that actually is available in the browser. It's not shipped. And then they'll enable that feature just on that website. So you can get like live feedback from using that feature. So of course, it's not for all your users, because like you need to make sure that your website doesn't break without the feature. Otherwise, it will be pretty bad. So like you can get that feedback and you can play around with it and give that feedback. So if you want to like get a new token for next time this new Chrome release, you will have to like give some feedback in order to be able to get a new token. And eventually they're gonna like hopefully gonna ship the feature, and then we'll just adopt it. So we really try to collaborate with as many as possible. And like definitely we want to hear from people that want to build for the web. Like what are your issues? What can we help with? Especially this is the capabilities project. Of course, it also like if you're working on other things, that's also possible. Even in the standardization world in W3C, we have something called the YCG. It's the Web Incubator Community Group. So this is a community group. It means you don't need to be a member of the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. You can just participate like any open source project. So you can come up with your own explain of a feature or even like specification, and then you can ask for the YCG to consider it. So they usually start on discourse where people would be discussing like a feature. Then someone said, okay, yeah, it's accepted by YCG. You get like a repo on the YCG, like GitHub domain. And then you iterate there, and hopefully some browser will pick it up, or it will move to another working group. So definitely there are many ways that you can contribute. and I'm happy to share links and that like
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
like offline.
You can surely have. In the meantime, we have a question from Sofia. How many people are approximately on FUGU project actually?
It's very, very difficult to say because like the FUKU project was initiated by Google, and then like Intel and Microsoft joined. So I actually got the technical lead Alex Russell, and I got the program manager like Thomas Natterstad to actually fly into our office in Portland and convince my boss that we should invest in this, and then we joined. So like we have people, but it's like how much time are you spending on FUKU? I don't spend all my time on this, but I do spend considerable cycles, and we have like other people working on this, and we have even like internal project that could be related to FUGU, could become FUGU stuff in the future, if we kind of like shown that it makes sense. Well, like definitely like Microsoft, they have a lot of people also. It's another link I can find that's like the sync notes where you can like see a list of like some of the people working on it, where we have like bi-weekly meetings. I believe we actually have weekly meetings, but it's like different time zones, where you can see like what we're discussing. So Intel will come with like this is what we've been working on the last 2 weeks, and these are impediments, and people will go say, yeah, okay, you have impediment because like you've problem with you need a security review. Let me find a security reviewer inside of Microsoft and one inside of Google that can help and collaborate with you. So reading these notes, you get like a sense of what people are working on and how many people are working on it. But it's considerable people. Google have a lot of people working on this. It's very important. And so does Microsoft. Intel has less. We're a smaller team. There's also a FUKU API tracker. This is like a progressive web app where you can go and actually see what features we're working on and which one have shipped. And I will definitely share all of these URLs with Bartosz afterwards, so he can share them with all of you.
Yeah, that's amazing. So Kenneth, do you believe that companies would trust more platforms when bootstrapping new businesses, like, because right now, as you said, there are a lot of platforms, like should we go with a native app, iOS, Android, web, or maybe, I don't know, smartwatch app? And then by ideal like set of events, we would have that is going to be shared across as many devices as possible. Is that like possible in upcoming years? Is it already possible? How do you feel about the future of this modern web? As you were saying, that it's not only like about PWA, it's about what web can do and where we can use web. How do you feel about that?
I think it depends a lot on what you're trying to accomplish. So like there's some platforms like that don't support web, like some smartwatches don't support it. Actually, I think like the news company that Google just bought for the smartwatch is actually partly based on JavaScript. So maybe they could do something. But like it really depends on what you want to do. And I think like this brings me to another point. So there's a lot of people on the web saying like, well, it's all have to be progressive. So you need to write this app and have it work everywhere, and then progressively enhance with feature. Generally, I agree with that. So definitely, if you make like an app and you don't have like Webshare available, test for it, make a separate API. But it always have like limits, because if you ask like a program manager, like, oh, you want to do an Android app, they'll probably say, yeah, okay, you can support from Android 9 and up, and that's it, because I want a modern looking Android app. So otherwise, no one wants my app. It needs to be great. Same with iOS. But on the web, it is often the other way around. Like, oh, if you're doing a web app, it's gonna work on every browser that has ever existed. Yeah, we might have 0.001% people using Internet Explorer 6. Gotta work on Internet Explorer 6. And here it's kind of like depends on what kind of experience you're creating. So if your experience really requires like more modern feature, or it requires that to get the experience and the sleekness and performance you want, well, then you target those browsers, and then you can build a slightly less nice experience for the rest of the users. I think that's a better approach, because sometimes it might be difficult to create an app that just works across like every browser out there that has ever existed. Generally, personally, I say like if you want to build like a web app that should be the nice integration and experience that could compete against a native app. So this is instead of building a native app. Well, then I would go for what's called evergreen browsers, like the last 2-3 versions of every modern browser. that are like frequently being updated. Like the last version of Chrome, last versions of Safari, the last versions of maybe Firefox and Edge. And then for the rest, I would create like a less nice application, like a fallback experience instead, if that's possible. Because it's better than like either you just do a native app, but there's no experience for anyone on the web, or you do something similar. We need to be able to compete, and browsers are getting better. But if you go to the if you just cannot use a feature because it's not available on a 5-year-old browser, well, that is not going to make that web application competitive, because we already knew from 5 years ago that that was not competitive. So that's not going to change on a browser that's not being updated.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, you have applications on Android that you have some version of your phone, some version of Android, and you have the like prompt, you need at least version this and that to use this application, because it's not possible to use it. So the same would be possible, in your opinion, for
I
the
don't
modern
like
web?
so much this like prompting people to upgrade, but like usually if on Android today, like it will auto update your Chrome versions unless you say like don't update it. So I think like just like say like the last 2 or 3 versions, depending on the resources you have, make it work there, make it work great. Use progressive enhancement for the features not available. Depending on like the effort it takes. Like if you have a team of like 10 people, you can do some. If you have a team of 3 people, maybe you're not able to like support all these different versions. For the rest, like try to maybe do like a less nice experience. It might not look as fancy, it might not have the nice animations, but like still serve them like something. I think that would be better than like telling, hey, sorry, please upgrade. I kind of don't like that kind of web, but like it's people's own choice that they didn't upgrade because they have the ability to, right? But that way, like you still have a website that works for everyone, but it might not be this nice app-like experience. So it might be like a regular website. You can imagine something like so like a weather application. So it's just like you get a simple static web page that will show you the weather. But if you have like a newer browser, you get one where you can interact with it and scroll and pan and tilt and do whatever, right? And it will look like a very nice app experience, and you can install it to your system as a progressive web app. I don't think you necessarily need to make the one app that supports all of these platforms, because it might be very difficult to maintain and get the experience that your users actually demand.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's really interesting. So we are like over 1 hour. I would just quickly ask if you guys have some questions to Kenneth, because as I told you, he's working very closely with those big companies, those standardization processes. So he has some insider knowledge, and he can point you to another person, maybe so other resource. Of course, I will have the links for you. You can come back to me and I will share with you. But if you have some questions right now, just hit them on the chat. And this is really nice that we could meet actually on this live, Kenneth, because we last time saw each other on some conference. I guess it was NG Colombia, and since then, the time passed. Now we are locked in homes. There are no conferences. And actually, I have this thing that you gave me on the conference, this Nordic thingy. I was playing around with it. It's like for you guys, Kenneth is also into IoT. Around this thing, like a lot of sensors, like gyroscope, temperature, and actually it has even the air quality meter that I was using with my phone to see what a quality of air in Poland is. So you are probably showing some kind of Bluetooth and web Bluetooth and something around gyroscope and accelerometer with another speaker on NG Colombia. Do I remember correctly?
Yeah, so like, and actually at Intel, I'm kind of responsible for exposing for certain set of hardware and the relation to the web, and some of them include like Bluetooth and USB. So Google have been working on exposing USB and Bluetooth to the web like long ago. So I work with that. We even did an IDE for a product we used to have at Intel. So I have this like IDE, JavaScript IDE. So that was like one of the first product where I actually was working with like web USB and getting that all working. So I also talked a lot. I worked on IoT, so I talked with the Nordic guys and people, and they were working a lot. Like, yeah, it's very cool, and they saw like the value in supporting like web Bluetooth. They're a very big Bluetooth manufacturer. So actually, this device, there is an app and a library that just allows you to use a library, and you can connect to it and just from a web app, and it all based on top of web Bluetooth. So yeah, I worked a lot with that. Worked with a lot of different partners to make sure that this is very useful. So it's one of those APIs where people were like, "Oh my god, like USB on the web, that's terrible. Why would I ever need that?" But the thing is that like it is actually very useful for a lot of people, and especially companies. So like you might have companies, like it could be like, say in a hospital, we have specific devices, old device you want to connect to, but they had an application that was written for like a very old version of Windows. It's not being maintained anymore. You have different version of the OSs. Like they see a lot of value in migrating to the web, having everything on a web server where they can talk to each other, but still being able to talk to these devices is very useful. It'll be like a printer for printing out receipts and whatnot. Like a friend of mine, Niels, was doing that for like he's writing software like for hairdressers, and they're using like I think like web USB for like printing receipts. So having the ability to connect to existing hardware or even like new hardware inside the enterprise or your businesses is very, very useful. But even like for developers, like a lot of people who like IoT, they buy these like mini boards like Arduinos, and like a lot of these or like I think like the BBC microbit, you can use those using web USB, web Bluetooth. Even Roomba, like, you know, like the vacuum cleaner. They have like this like kids toy where it's like a mini robot that can drive around like the Roomba. I forgot the name, and it have a pen inside, and you can like draw, and you can mount Legos on top of it. So it's like actually pretty cool. And you can program this using web USB and web Bluetooth, and it's very useful because it's very easy for kids in the school. Like you just have your Chromebooks or Windows, and you just connect to it. No effort. And the way like we really worked on the privacy angle of this, so it's gonna show you. It's not like you go to a website and have access to like what a Bluetooth device around you. No, it doesn't. It will like on a user gesture like you touch, it's able to ask you, please select a Bluetooth device, and then it's gonna show you some Bluetooth devices around you, or use connected USB devices. These devices, like the website, even at this point, cannot get access to that info. It has no idea what you're seeing. This is trusted browser UI. Only when you go and select that exact device you want to share with the site, it's the time that it gets that kind of access. And then it's gonna like show somehow that it has this access, so you can revoke it if you don't need it. Hopefully in the future, we're gonna get like time restricted permissions, like okay, allow connection for this session for 10 minutes, for an hour, for 2 days, whatever. There's a lot of infrastructure for that to happen. I believe like Android is working on that for the next version of Android, and it's probably coming like to desktop OSs as well. So definitely privacy and the user control in focus. And like I think this is very useful. So even something that sounds so specific, it can be very important, because if you're that company and that is your core to your business, if you don't have that ability on the web, well, you cannot choose web. That is as simple as it gets. So I'm very happy we get this. Also, the APIs are generally very high quality, because it's not like on many native platforms where we have like a small team that did like a USB API, and they were just like the ones like who got asked to do it. So that's the API you got. On the web, we actually go through like people do a design document, they do an explainer, it comes through the technical architecture group W3C to get a review. It goes through wide review to other groups. It gets input from different browser vendors. Generally, the API quality is pretty high on the web.
Kenneth,
and especially something yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to wrap things up because we are over time. And here's like your Twitter handle. If you want to chat with Kenneth, I believe more than happy to discuss with you those things regarding PWA, trusted web activity, or maybe IoT. He's like very smart guy and passionate about what he does for this pushing the web to the next level. Kenneth Rohde is his Twitter account. Is there any other place that people can catch up with you, or Twitter is the thing that is the one that you prefer?
I usually use Twitter for that. I do have a LinkedIn as well. But yeah, I normally on LinkedIn, I normally only connect with people I know, because otherwise I don't know who I'm connected to. It's more like a professional thing, but like Twitter is great. Yeah.
Okay, we have also a question: how important documenting the thing when we working on PWA? Can you? I'm not sure if I understand the question. Can I understand the question?
No, I don't understand whether this is like whether you as a developer should document what you're doing, or whether we who are working on PWA technology should document it. Because like we who's working on progressive web app, of course we like write everything in standard, so it's become a standard. But there's a lot of focus on like the MDN and now the open web docs, that they will try to document all of these features, making sure that MDN is the resource you go to for all documentations on the web, and you find like great articles, good overview over the APIs. And now with the new open web docs, where even you as developer can go and sponsor it, say by €5 or dollars per month, we'll get more and more resources, or that group will get more and more resources, so they can hire writers to actually work on documenting the things that developers need. So now that Mozilla has kind of like left it by letting go of the MDN team, we're like rebuilding it. MDN is still the place to go to for web documentation.
Yeah, basically, I think that might be that if you are working on those cool new features, and we as developers need like a comprehensive documentation to be able to ship it and like ship it properly, right? So you're saying that there are projects that you can sponsor to have new technical writers on the team to write documentation?
So the story is that like Mozilla created something called MDN, Mozilla Development Network, I believe, and that has become the place that users go to for documentation. So everyone else, like the W3C, the World Web Consortium, tried to create webplatform.org as the new place, like for all the browsers, not just Mozilla. But like it never panned out. People still use MDN, and MDN was great. So Microsoft, Google, Samsung, and others decided, well, why don't we just like team up with MDN and we use our resources to actually also document MDN? So it's like this one resource. So like that's what people are doing today. Google still decided that they want to have like web.dev for like more like articles about like things they're working on. So they kind of have both MDN and web.dev, but like documentation of APIs is MDN. But then like I don't know, like I said, like Mozilla is not going so great, so they end up firing a lot of people, and they basically let go of the team behind MDN. And the MDN team has just like working a lot on actually moving everything to GitHub, which is like great for contributions. But like suddenly, like most of them are let go. So everyone like Microsoft and Google and Samsung and others still like, oh wow, we got to do something. Want to save MDN. So they created Open Web Doc as a foundation, I believe, where both like those like founding companies paid a lot of money, or they're paying a lot of money per year to make sure that they can have like some staff that will actually go and document the web. But like that is not enough. So they're also asking for people to contribute. So I know that some company like Igalia that works on a lot of web API, they gave like a big contribution as well. And even like I went in and gave a contribution. I don't remember how much I gave, $50 or something. And like other developers, like you can go in, it's usually like this website where you can contribute. So I see like friends of mine that's like, well, I'm just paying like $5 per month. And then like the foundation will get that money, and they will use that money on actually hiring people to go and write that documentation. So yeah, if you care about the web, you care about it being documented, it's a great way to either you do like your own contribution, or convince like your company to actually pitch in. Like if you're using the web, if you're depending on web technology, like I think that every company should be sponsoring. Definitely a great thing.
Kenneth,
And
I think that
please ask me for those URLs afterward, and I'll find them out for you, find them all for
yeah.
you and share them. So
Yeah, exactly. Because I believe that the most interesting part is to see those things in action, to play around it, to maybe implement it in own project. We have those manifest service workers and those all APIs that we are talking about. This is something that people definitely would probably like to play around. Kenneth, I would like to thank you very much, and I hope that we will find another interesting topic that may be coming out from the community to bring up on the table and discuss. And one more time, thanks for joining. And
okay, thank you for having me here, and I hope it was useful. So
yeah,
have a nice
so
evening, everyone.
we are going to close the broadcast. So guys, unless I don't see any additional questions, we are going to say bye to you and see you next time.